And my name is Ian, for those of you who don't know me, and it's our Sunday meeting, kind of the highlight of our program week. And so it's really nice to be with you here today. And just wanted to do a couple of announcements, not too many. I'm doing that for Adrian because they are busy with the tech stuff today and don't have their regular helper. So that brings me to maybe the first thing. If you are interested in volunteering in any way, technically, with a website, social media, or you have some kind of organizational skill, or anything that you can think of, please let us know. You can let one of the teachers know. If you're there in person, you can talk to Adrian today, or you can put a note in chat and just let us know, because we're really needing volunteers, especially as we start doing more in-person stuff. So just also wanted to let you know about our regular meeting. Most people are familiar, but just in case, we have a teacher-led Tuesday sit and Dharma talk at 6:30 p.m. and that's on Zoom. Wednesday we have just a sit, a peer-led sit. It's called Just Sit, and that's what we do. And it's 5:30 to 6:15. And all you have to do is just click on the link for that day and show up and enjoy. And someone will facilitate that, Mark or Will or someone who's a regular at that meeting. And then on Friday, we have our weekly metta practice, which is something I generally offer at 4:30 p.m. for 45 minutes. It's a guided meditation and a really lovely way to reconnect with the heart energy. Yeah, so we have that. And then I just also want to mention our engine for being able to produce events and rent space and all of that, which is your expression of generosity. So there's the feeling of generosity and wanting to share, which in the teachings is called chaga. And then there's the act of generosity, the act of being generous, actually putting action to our intention, which is called dana, which is generous giving. And so whatever ways that you are able to support our community is so valued and so needed. We are running in the red right now as we sort of find our feet after let's hope, the worst of the pandemic and begin to meet in person again. And so we really need your support. And it's very clear from recent board meetings then looking at our finances that it's really important. So if you're in a position to help financially, please do. And remember, there are some people who are not. And so if you are, maybe you can offer a little more to support others who aren't able to. And you can find a Dana link in the invite that you received today that brought you to this meeting, or you can go to our website and find one very easily. So those are the announcements. And now it's really a big pleasure to welcome our guest teacher, Katy Wiss, who is joining us from Connecticut. Hi, Katy. Lovely to see you. Glad you're with us. I first met Katy about 4 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, when we were teaching the fall LGBTQIA plus retreat at Dhammadena up in the high desert with Arena Weissman. And Katy was teaching the first week, and I was teaching the second, so we only overlapped just a little, just I think half a day. And I also just felt a very welcome ease with Katy right away. And I thought, this is somebody, I want to practice with again. And so it's really lovely to have you with us today, Katy. So thank you for being here. And it's a sweet moment to welcome you to our sangha. And so Katy began practicing mantra meditation in 1976. And in 2002, she shifted to a focus on Vipassana meditation. And she's trained in a lot of Spirit Rocks, different study and practice programs, including retreat teacher training, which is sort of the national level training. And she's also trained at New York Insight Meditation Society and the Chuang Yen Monastery. And Katy is a professor of communications at Western Connecticut State University. And she regularly teaches insight meditation to college students. And she's also interested in meditation and chronic illness. And I also saw trauma on your website. So Katy, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Ian. That's such a lovely, warm introduction. And it also highlights something that I just want to sort of honor, which is I think it's really important to meet in community. Community can be a refuge, just like our meditation practice and the teachings. And it's really sort of a privilege and an honor, maybe even a sacred honor, to be invited into another community and just stop in and see what's happening and um, yeah, help to spread the word and keep people connected. Um, and in part, I know this might be a little odd to do it, but if it's possible, if you can just maybe in the chat say a little bit, maybe a phrase or two about what you're bringing with you tonight. Might be could be a million different things. Maybe there's anxiety, maybe there's frustration, maybe there's joy, maybe there's, just maybe a word or two. And I think, is the chat open to everybody? Yes, it is. Good thing I checked that. So, um, I guess I'll have to say, like, I have some pretty high energy right now. I think it's because I'm teaching tonight. So what do we have coming in here? Gratitude, hope, such lovely emotions and perspectives to be in touch with. Curiosity. Ah, yes, I'm wondering what I'm going to say myself. Aha. Working with disappointment, gratitude, sharing, serenity. Ah, lovely. Sometimes it's just an amazing thing to just check in with our minds and see what's going on. Thinking. Ah, ah, a difficult week of COVID. Ah, wishing you peace and ease in your healing. Oh, okay, so it looks like we're bringing what John Kabat-Zinn has called the whole catastrophe with us, everything from health to illness and sadness or depression and curiosity and everything in between. So those are lovely things, I think, to remember that we are all sort of carrying with us. And so thank you. That gives me a little bit of a chance to get to know who you are before I start talking. And I'm going to actually invite us to do a silent meditation for about half an hour or so, 25 minutes or so. I'll give you some instructions and that maybe are relevant to the topic I'm going to discuss this evening, and not to leave you in suspense about that, but Ian and I had discussed several different topics, but tonight I think I'm just going to talk about meeting the present moment. I'm going to keep it super simple. Oh, wow, and there's people in person, so welcome, hello to all of you. Sorry, maybe you couldn't participate in the chat, so welcoming you as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our stationary meditation. Not sure you can hear that. So as we begin to settle in, taking a comfortable position that works for you and your body right now. If that's sitting on a cushion, that's great. If it's lying down, that's actually okay with me. Um, and as you find that comfortable position, that's a mixture of alert attention and tranquility and ease. Perhaps if it feels comfortable to you, you can allow the eyes to close and begin to find the breath. And I'm going to invite you to follow the instructions I give this evening or this afternoon. But it's really okay with me if you find your own practice as well. But I'll just invite you at the beginning to just, or as we begin here this evening, to just be receptive. See if you can open yourself to being receptive to just this one moment, just this one breath. And perhaps also adding a quality of curiosity about what's present. And then the instructions are really to just stay in touch with the breath when we're breathing in, to know that we are breathing in. And when we're breathing out, to know that we're breathing out. So we're just coming to rest here with quiet attention, following the breath. And perhaps leaning towards the side of openness and spaciousness and receptivity, and see what that's like for us as we follow the breath. And then just becoming aware that if something arises in the body, a physical sensation, perhaps we sense something at the hearing doors, or maybe a thought arises in the mind, we can greet that all with spaciousness and allowing, and then a quiet return to the breath. So I'll be quiet for a little while now. I may check in a little bit, but these are the basic instructions. Breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. And anytime the mind wanders off the breath, we can return. So as you feel ready, you can open your eyes, maybe shift a little, stretch, make this transition a comfortable one from sitting silently to the next phase here. So as I said, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about this evening, and I decided to go for something that's very present for me right now in terms of my practice and what's going on for me. And it was inspired by probably two teachers, mostly maybe Thich Nhat Hanh and a little bit Tara Brach, and then probably a few other people thrown in there as well. But I'm reminded that really the core teaching that the Buddha offered us and that all of the modern day teachers offer us is to really understand suffering, to really know suffering and the cause of suffering. And one of the ways to do that is also by knowing the mind and then being willing to let go. And so I think sometimes it's helpful to keep that in mind so that we don't get too complicated and bogged down in some of the theory and discussions um, and so tonight I think I called the talk the value of present moment awareness. And if you've been meditating for a long time, you probably know the value of present moment awareness. I've been meditating for a long time. And yet sometimes, actually, I'm going to be vague about what sometimes means. That's probably closer to quite often. I find myself doing almost everything I can to take myself out of the present moment. And so this is really something that has, in fact, after a couple years of fairly, yeah, I've secluded myself a lot over the past couple of years. And I don't know if that's a factor in this or not, but I feel like I'm um, yes, I'm often not very comfortable with the present moment. But so let me read you a little something that the Buddha said. He said, "Let go of the past. There's no need to worry about the future. The things of the past are gone. The future is not yet here. There's no need to drown in the distractions of the present. What is happening in the present should be observed deeply, and the wise ones live according to this and dwell in stability and freedom. Notice how this develops a wise heart." And so that's actually another reason I wanted to just talk about present moment awareness is because it's really sort of the basic instruction. And I wanted to keep the talk tonight very practical, but also open-hearted and spacious. And so these quotes from the Buddha, I think are a great reminder, at least to me right now, because it's very easy, of course, as we all know, to worry about the future and not let go of the past. And yet, the longer we've been practicing, and sometimes it happens after even quite a short time, we notice that being open to what's happening right here and right now can help us cultivate a wise and kind heart. So instead of that, though, let me know if these are things, or you can think quietly to yourself. I guess we're not in a room together. I don't want to make things too technical and complicated, but think about this for yourself. Is this how you meet life instead? Are you often running late? I'm often running late, and sometimes when I'm running late, I'm not really in the present moment. Maybe you find yourself overcommitted. I was very pleased with myself a couple weeks ago. I turned down an offer to do something that was really very an unpleasant task. So it wasn't as hard to do it, but I think there's a time in my life when I would have said yes to it. Maybe you find yourself multitasking and juggling so many different things that you don't really ever have time to have a sense of the present moment. Or maybe, like me, you love a good distraction. Yeah, I'll confess to being a big fan of bike racing and the Tour de France, and that is a 3 week distraction. So that's something I really need to become aware of, that some of these things can enter my life. And I'll talk maybe a little bit later about how we could do that mindfully, but um, and sometimes we're so caught up in something that's frustrating or something that we're working with that we just miss the beauty that's around us. And so, really, you can figure out which one is your favorite. I think just from the little bit I've said here, distraction is my big thing to avoid the present moment. And just to explore this a little bit more, because one of the things that, of course, we want to do is explore the mind. And maybe what happens is that when we're sitting in meditation, we start remembering something, and the mind really can sometimes quite enjoy memories. So maybe I can just spend a moment or two thinking about what a memory is. It's something that is did happen, but it's over. And we might be reminding ourselves of it because it's something that was pleasant or pleasurable. So you might remember, for example, in meditation, a time when you felt better, or when you were happier. It might even occur to you to think about when you were younger, or maybe a vacation comes to mind. And so lots of times things come to mind that are memories that actually are pleasant distractions. Um, and these can really become, well, we can just start to know them a little bit more. We don't need to sort of push them away. We can be open to the fact that they've arisen, and and just begin to notice a little bit more about them. Other times, the mind isn't as interested in remembering, but it's a little bit more interested in speculating about the future. So, for example, you might get caught up in yearning or longing or wishing, maybe expecting something to happen in your meditation sitting. Maybe you have some desire to do something, or maybe you're sitting and being quiet has opened up a window into into some anxiety. And so you can think about, and this is you please don't do this with a judgmental mind, but just with an aware, open, and spacious mind. Think about how often the mind is caught up not in the present moment, but in remembering the past or thinking about the future. And really just beginning to notice that can be quite helpful to staying in the present moment. Thich Nhat Hanh puts it this way. I think he's even written a book on this. Your appointment with life is in the present moment. If you are not able to touch the present moment, you miss your appointment with life. And so, really thinking about what is the present. You can't be late for the present. You can't really touch the present. Um, and how is it that we put an end to getting caught up in distractions? So in the Dhammapada, some of the oldest teachings that we have recorded of the Buddha, or maybe he didn't say them, but they're responses to his teachings in any case from the Dhammapada. Sitting alone, resting alone, going forth alone without laziness. They who understand deeply the roots of suffering enjoy great peace while dwelling in solitude. And so this is often, well, I think this is the Dhammapada is a great resource to go to look for inspirations to meditate. And so I offer it to you in that sense. But what strikes me about this is there's a lot here about sitting alone and resting alone and understanding the roots of suffering and dwelling in solitude. And I want to talk about that because we've come here in community. Yes, we've all been quiet and haven't talked much to each other. But what is this solitude that's being described here in the Dhammapada? Well, I believe this is Thich Nhat Hanh's idea, it's not my interpretation, that this being alone is sort of a sense of not being caught in distractions. So sitting alone, resting alone, going forth alone without laziness. So really cultivating the attitude of not being caught in distractions. And when we understand deeply what that's like to do that, then we enjoy great peace, dwelling without distractions. And I'm going to say that every single one of us has had an experience like that. Even if this is your first time showing up at a meditation session, there was probably even a moment, maybe even just a fraction of a second, where you were not caught in distraction. Even if you think you were distracted the whole time. And so it's important, I think, when we pay attention to notice those kinds of things. So Thich Nhat Hanh talks about living alone, but he's really not talking about living in isolation from ourselves and society. So partly what we're doing is really connecting to ourselves as well. So he's not really saying, or the teachings aren't really telling us to never look at the past or to never look at the future, but to just try not to get carried away by it. So to know when a thought of the past arises, to know when it's present, and to know when it's floating away. And when we know the past for the past, when we really know that the past is past, then we begin to notice what our tendencies are. And when we're really open to the future and not some fantasy or thoughts about the future, we can begin to let go of a fixed view of how things must be. So letting go of the future is letting go of a fixed idea of how things might be. And letting go of the past is knowing our dormant tendencies, our past tendencies for what they are. And alone means really, in this sense, not clinging to anything that comes through the sense doors. So not clinging to sights or sounds or tastes or smells or thoughts. And we know we all do this, and there's not a problem with doing it. It's really to just remember to let go, let go, let go, let go. Because we notice then when we see our responses to thoughts about the past or the future, or paying attention to sights and sounds and tastes and thoughts less than mindfully, we notice our clinging and our aversion and our delusion. And when we pay attention to sights, sounds, tastes, thoughts, and smells mindfully, we know that we can see the joyous things arise in life. And so if we see things as they really are in the present moment, we see interconnection. And that's interconnection of ourselves with each other and with ourselves and with the teachings and with our communities. And sometimes I think it's maybe important for me to add this, that seeing life as it really is may be unsettling. I mean, there's plenty of times over the past, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, when, if I couldn't watch the news, things were just too unsettling, too overwhelming, and too sad. And so I needed to cultivate a little bit more mindfulness and a little bit more awareness to take in all of what's going on in the world. But that doesn't mean, and so that's a process that we're constantly learning to go back and forth between sort of looking out at what's really there and then cultivating this um, equanimous approach to receiving these messages through our sense doors. So, so it's simple, but it's powerful. I mean, I'm really just talking about being aware of the present moment. It's not that hard to do once. It's just hard to remember to do it over time. And so when we remember to do it over time, it can be simple and powerful. It can even connect you to a sense of the sacred in your life in the middle of our sort of mundane lives. Tara Brach even calls it the sacred pause. I don't know if that's an idea that she borrowed from someone else or not. That's where I've heard it. Maybe other people use it as well. So it's really quite powerful that in any moment we can tap into what's going on right now and um, enrich our lives. So instead of sort of seeing our lives as a sort of being in a rut of a daily grind or a daily drudgery or even daily obligations that we enjoy, can we learn to enjoy and appreciate and experience this breath, this breeze, this sound, this moment, and this day, rather than forgetting it, not paying attention, overlooking it, or blocking it out? And the miracle of this is that it only takes a second to remember this, and you all know this, you've all done it, and when we can do this, um, when we can reconnect with it, we reconnect with our lives in a way. And so to lose the present moment is really to lose life. And our typical cultural reactions to life are, I think, a primary one is to turn away from pain. We often turn away from our own pain. We often turn away from others' pain. That's why I can't turn on the TV to watch sometimes, because it's too much to take in. And what our culture has taught us is that we should just distract ourselves or just uh, grit our teeth and bear it. And so a lot of the impulses that condition us in our culture are to do things like drink or engage in some kind of addictive activity to numb us to our experience. It's why we get busy. It's why we do all sorts of things because we believe that not paying attention to our pain will decrease our suffering. And actually, there are times when that is probably true, when we don't have the mindfulness to hold our grief or our sorrow or our loss or our pain, and that's fine. Those are times when we can turn to other people for support. And, uh, but as we get the support we need, as we relax, as we settle in, we can turn our attention to the parts of ourselves that most need our attention to heal. And so, ironically, sometimes when people feel a lot of anxiety, rather than to slow down, drop the story, and feel and drop into the body, people get very busy and keep speeding up and doing more in order to drown out the anxiety. And so, ironically, they add more of the fuel to the fire. So, when we have a difficult day, when we have a difficult moment, when we're having a difficult period in our lives, um, can we just take a moment to feel those difficulties and those challenges and not get busy and not get distracted? Can we just pause for a moment and see what's happening? Roshi Robert Aitken has written a book of um, gathas, which are sort of prayers that can be said all day long to encourage practice. And I don't know if this is so much of uh, a, um, a demand on our time these days, I think. But you can substitute for telephone in what I'm about to read, whatever it is that demands your attention. So Robert Aitken says, whenever the telephone rings, I vow to all beings to allow it to ring one more time as I carefully breathe in and out. So rather than getting caught up in the demands of other people and their need to contact us, can we just take one more breath and before we reactively respond to what's going on around us? When we rush around like that, it's impossible to be empathic with somebody else and to really pay attention to them and to really listen. And so I'm going to read a little bit from a poem about by Sharon LaBelle called "Caretake This Moment." She says, "Caretake this moment, immerse yourself in its particulars. Respond to this person, this challenge, this deed. Quit the evasion. Stop giving yourself needless trouble. It's time to really live, to fully inhabit the situation you happen to be in now. You are not some disinterested bystander. Exert yourself. Respect your partnership with Providence. Ask yourself, how may I perform this particular deed such that it would be consistent with and acceptable to the divine will? Heed the answer and get to work. When your doors are shut and your room is dark, you are not alone. The will of nature is within you, as is your natural genius within. Listen to its importunings. Follow its directives. As concerns the art of living, the material is your own life. No great thing is created subtly. There must be time. Give your best and always be kind. And so what I like about that is that it reminds us that we've been given this one precious life. We're to make of it the best we can. And what I've found recently, and I think I just keep coming to more or subtler and subtler levels of this, is the task for me in meditation isn't so much to find all my faults and get rid of them as to really meet this to meet my appointment with life, as Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about, to really be with what's happening right now. Um, and it's okay if things are messy or sloppy. It's okay if I forget to be mindful a lot. It's okay. Um, I don't need to. Moments of mindfulness come and go. I don't need to make a bigger deal of them than uh, than is necessary. And somehow holding this uh, with a little bit of openness, with just a little bit of maybe even just internal slowing down, we can come to accept ourselves and where we are. And when we accept where we are, then if we're experiencing anxiety or doubt or greed or aversion, if we can just say, oh, this is what's happening right now. It doesn't need to stay like that forever. And we can, the staying aware in the present moment opens us up to more options. We become wholly present, wholly attentive, and often physically still. Tara Brach says we need to reconnect with the life of our bodies to feel our hearts. That's the sacred pause. At any time, and you can do that. I'm just going to insert a little something here. You can do that like no matter what. If you're sad because, a relative died, like that's part of the whole human experience. Honor that, feel that. That's what's going on right now. That's this very human life. So we need to reconnect with the life of our bodies to feel our hearts. That's the sacred pause. At any time, we can take a few breaths, relax, and pay attention. Be brave enough to pause entails feeling any anxiety in our bodies, but we also feel the presence and kindness underneath it. So I'll just invite you for a moment to just do nothing. Can you take a deep breath and just do nothing? It's a little hard, I think, actually, to do this. But I notice just as I'm doing it here, like already I was just aware of a breath, whereas before when I was talking, I wasn't. Already I've just paused a little bit and I'm feeling less of the pressure of like, how much of this talk can I cover? Am I saying enough? Am I going too fast? Am I going slow? I just pause and allow things to be. And we hear this phrase a lot, or I've heard it a lot from my teachers, beginner's mind, which of course is a phrase taken from, blanking on his name, is it D.T. Suzuki? Um, that in the beginner's mind, all things are possible. In the experienced meditator's mind, well, I'm losing the gist of the quote. I'm paraphrasing wildly now, but Um, sometimes when we feel like we know something, our possibilities are cut off. And so when we come to each breath anew, we we see that more of the possibilities are there as opposed to being closed off from what has happened in in the past. And interestingly enough, one of the references I found when I was sort of thinking about this today is it's a little bit this sacred pause is a little bit like what a conductor does before she begins a concert. So, what does a conductor do before they start conducting? They don't run up on the stage, beginning haphazardly, juggling a bunch of papers, flying into the piece of music as though they've just dashed out of the car, cup of coffee in hand, briefcase dragging. No. Um, she doesn't just start asking the orchestra to start playing or the chorus to start singing. She stops and pauses. And what's interesting about that pause, if you've ever to a classic music concert and seen this or experienced this, the whole room is quiet. And the awareness and attention to what's going to happen next really peaks. And as the concert begins and the activity commences, um, we're primed for paying attention in a slightly different way. So, again, is it possible for us to do this in our lives? It's nothing special, and yet it's sort of extraordinary. There's very few places that this happens. And so, can we make this a regular part of our lives? Um, and so, we can do this when we're sitting on the cushion. I also like to talk about daily life practices. This is something we can do in our daily lives. Take that breath before when you hear the phone ringing at work, or take that breath, when you walk through a doorway. Take that mindful breath before you stand up. Can you incorporate regular times during the day when you can just pause? What will the effect be? Well, I believe Tara talks about this, that sometimes with our meditation, a lot of we over effort and there's striving. And so perhaps just being open to a spacious present moment experience, we can notice that striving can be wasteful and exhausting. And moments of insight don't really arise as much. And so we know this happens when we leave the cushion and go back to our regular lives. There's, first of all, we're calm and quiet for a little bit, and then we can see our effect on other people. And so, can we all do this all the time? I don't know. But a pause is by definition limited. So we can all pause for a little bit. And before we continue on, we can resume our activities, but differently. In the pause between sinking our teeth into a chocolate bar, we might recognize the tingle of anticipation. Or maybe a little wondering if this is a good thing to eat or not. And then we may choose to savor the chocolate or skip the chocolate. And so just that little moment of just before we bite into that chocolate bar, several options open up for us. And this pause can begin to disrupt our conditioning and our habits as we open ourselves to new and creative ways of responding to our wants and our fears. We can take our hands off the controls, and pausing lets us clearly see the wants, desires, and fears that drive us. We become conscious of how feeling that something is missing or wrong leads us to leaning into the future. And we can continue to manage our past experiences or futilely, or we can meet our vulnerability with the wisdom of what Tara calls radical acceptance. And one of the ways to do that is really by incorporating this present moment awareness. So I'll end there. I'll thank you for your kind attention. And I'll take a pause before I go on to the next part of my evening here with you. And I see there's a question in the comments area, the chat on the book, and I'll get so one of the books I was talking about is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, and I think the one by Thich Nhat Hanh is called Your Appointment with Life. It looks like it's time for us to end. Oh, it was lovely spending time with you all. I really appreciate all of your questions, your attention. What an amazing group. So glad I met Ian, and um, been thinking about moving to the desert myself. It's only at 94 here though, so I'm not sure I really want to move anywhere as hot as it is there. Okay, so let's do this. I'll dedicate the merits of our practice. It's such a lovely time being with you. I wish I could be with you in person. We'll have to save that for some. I'm noticing that a wish and a desire for something in the present moment, but that's my body being filled with all sorts of positive energy by being here with you. So let's take all of that positive energy that we've cultivated by being here together and dedicate that to ending the suffering of the planet, sentient beings, human beings, and yes, may all beings be free. Yes, so thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here with you.